Just for you. Yeah, all the good ones, Andy, no.
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are back again, and the sequel is subtitled The Secret of the Ooze. And I'm sure that we're looking forward to reviewing that and 4 other movies on this edition of Siskel and Ebert. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune. Our first film is the Ninja Turtle sequel, and I found the new one just as boring and violence-filled as the first one, with one difference. The novelty of seeing the turtles has worn off. Here's the opening fight in the film, choreographed like a music video, with the turtles taking on some thieves in a shopping mall.
Hey, now you do.
Back in the picture is the turtles' human friend, a TV reporter, this time played by the pleasant Paige Turco. They like her, and of course, they like their pizza.
Okay, Ninja pizza.
Ninja pizza?
Pizza that vanished quickly without trace.
The main story has an ecological theme as the turtles learn about their origin from their Zen master, a rat named Splinter. It turns out the turtles grew out of a chemical ooze that is still around and dangerous.
You have never seen this, but know what is.
That's the canister that had the ooze.
That transformed us all.
The big enemy, once again, is the Foot Clan, a bunch of thugs led by the evil Shredder. Here they fight over a canister of the dangerous ooze. And Shredder's plan is to create some monsters using the ooze that'll help him take over the world. Now, this picture wouldn't be worth so much scrutiny if the series wasn't such a big hit. What I find depressing most, I think, is the amount of violence in the picture, some of which is presented as good, clean fun. The turtles are presented, however, as not really heroic, more as somewhat dim but energetic teenagers. I only smiled at a couple of the silly pratfalls at the beginning of the movie. After that, Ninja Turtles 2 was really depressing to sit through.
I was depressed too, Gene. You know, the superheroes that we grew up with, like Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and Spider-Man, were individuals who really stood for something and who really had ideas. And here you have kind of a collective group of these radioactive turtles who seem to applaud the lowest common denominator. They talk to each other in the way that teenage boys sometimes do when they're trying not to stand out from the crowd by having any ideas. You know, cowabunga, dude. It's like, as long as we all talk in this way and act in unison, we don't have any ideas of our own. We're not individuals. We don't have to make decisions. It'll all be just fine. It's really depressing. I think there's something going on with these turtles that is telling us something alarming about our society.
I agree. And you know, the theory, you might be worried, oh, I'm going to come off as an older scold. I don't remember how the superheroes of my youth, but I think you put that very well. There was something to admire here. I think it is, if we're all stupid, if we all act dumb, if we all kick mindlessly,
and if violence is the answer,
then it's safe. Nobody declaring them, no one really putting themselves out as in a risky situation as a group or as an individual.
Yeah, these guys, these turtles are named after Renaissance artists. They don't have, between the 4 of them, an idea worthy of
any one of those names.
Any one of those names or any other name in the phone book. Okay, next movie. And our next movie is The Comfort of Strangers, written and directed by Paul Schrader, whose work includes the studies of some fairly strange people like Travis Bickle, Yukio Mishima, and Patty Hearst, but perhaps nobody quite as strange as the characters played by Christopher Walken and Helen Mirren in this movie. They play a rich couple who live in Venice and who have taken a couple of British tourists into their home. The tourists discovered that the local hospitality is rather odd and rather frightening.
Caroline came in and looked at us both whilst we were asleep.
And did she?
The young couple there is played by Rupert Everett and Natasha Richardson. They've been together for 4 years, but the trip to Venice is providing a difficult test for their relationship.
Actually, I remember why we came. We thought we'd find out what to do, didn't we? What to do about you and me.
The film is filled with a menacing undercurrent that sometimes suddenly surfaces, as in this entirely unexpected episode.
My father and his father understood themselves clearly. They were men, and they were proud of their sex. Women understood them too. Now, women treat men like children because they can't take them seriously, but men like my father, my grandfather. Women took very seriously. There was no uncertainty, no confusion.
So, this is a museum dedicated to the good old days. Hmm?
It only gradually becomes apparent that the older couple wants to kidnap those young people, keep them prisoner, and that's only the beginning of what they have in mind. The Comfort of Strangers is based on a Harold Pinter screenplay and an odd, violent novel by Ian McEwan, who specializes in bizarre character studies. Paul Schrader was probably attracted to it, I imagine, by the opportunity to tell this strange story of perverse people against a romantic and yet slightly decadent background like Venice. The idea is perhaps a good one, but the movie doesn't succeed, maybe because the story becomes too hard to believe, or maybe because so many of the developments are so arbitrary that the audience feels tricked. There were good things in the movie, including the eerie speech Walken keeps repeating about his father's mustache, but I don't think the film quite works.
It didn't work for me, and so I think it may be the first Paul Schrader picture that I haven't liked. One thing stopped me cold, and that was Christopher Walken's accent. Now, I didn't buy it for a second. I mean, they could make Rupert Everett the one with the accent, switch characters around. That might have worked. Christopher Walken played a character on Saturday Night Live once called the Continental, based on an old TV show where he put on this Continental accent. Well, I'm watching this, and it's the same accent, and I am smiling to myself while, I mean, it didn't even come close. Plus, I'm noticing his hair, and that hurt the picture a lot. I don't think it's just my particular response. I think a lot of people will have trouble with his accent there. And then, of course, the behavior is so outrageous that it's... the last thing you want to do is notice how someone's
Another
speaking.
problem, I think, is with exactly who these people are. I think the relationship between the young couple is never made quite clear. There's an ambiguity there that's never explored or never exploited, and by the end of the film, you have more questions, I think, really, than Schrader really wanted to leave you with.
Okay, later in the show, we'll review Mr. Johnson, the latest film from the director of Driving Miss Daisy. But coming up next, Defending Your Life, the new comedy from Albert Brooks, which stars Meryl Streep.
Don't look. Back.
I promise. Good morning.
Good morning. Don't make conversation.
Are you disputing?
That's comic filmmaker Albert Brooks defending his life in the film called Defending Your Life. And the premise of this comedy is a good one. Brooks comes up with a version of Purgatory that he calls Judgment City that looks like a depressing Disneyland in which the newly dead are required to defend their behavior on Earth in order to move on in the universe to higher learning. But if they haven't been smart or courageous, it's back to Earth in another body for another try. Brooks is on his 20th try. He plays an advertising guy who has been a coward much of his life, and he learns about his upcoming trial in a phone call from his defense counsel, well played by Rip Torn.
You're here to defend your life, and I'm going to help you.
Defend my life?
In a few hours, you're going to be smarter than anyone you've ever met. Sound exciting?
Yeah, I guess.
It is, believe me. Say, did you eat breakfast yet?
No.
I've got some good news for you. It's not only the best food you'll ever have, but you can eat all you want.
I can what?
As long as you're here, you can eat all you want. It won't affect you physically, and you won't gain weight.
Later at the trial, prosecutor Lee Grant shows the judges an example of Brooks being a nervous Nellie after his wife has helped him practice for a job interview.
60?
65.
61.
Let me make it plain. I cannot take the job for under 65, under no conditions.
Your Honors, I would like to go directly to the next afternoon and show you the real encounter.
Danielle, I'm prepared to give you $49,000. I'll take it.
Also awaiting trial is Meryl Streep, playing a goody-goody character, much like her popular image. Brooks falls in love with her, and their initial banter is cute.
This is your hotel?
Yeah. Where are you staying?
Obviously the place for people who weren't very generous and didn't adopt anybody. I'm at the Continental. Come over one day, we'll paint it.
Defending Your Life gets a mixed review from me. I enjoyed the setup, the jokes about Judgment City, and much of his trial. But I thought the film fell down at the end in the relationship between Brooks and Streep. He's trying to give us a heartfelt message about how we should all be more brave in our relationships. That probably has a lot of meaning for him. It's not very funny for us. There are enough laughs to recommend the picture, but this is hardly Albert Brooks's best work.
I did like the ending, and I like what happened to the characters at the end. I thought this was a movie about how people can hope for redemption and moving up to a higher plane through the love of somebody who is more advanced than they are, which I think is his whole attraction to Meryl Streep in this movie. She's the kind of person he would like to be, and he's trying to learn how to be that kind of person.
I just thought that was a little too sweet. I looked for a little harder edge in Albert Brooks. The kind of stuff that is very funny at the beginning of the picture where he posits a purgatory full of Sheraton and Hilton hotels. I mean, a whole world that's gray, where you could, this American desire to eat everything and not gain weight is like the supreme thing to be worshipped. The idea of these custodians of the purgatory who look down on the newly dead as they arrive and call them little brains. I mean, it's the kind of derisive remark people make.
I love all of that stuff. You know,
very funny setup.
Just a couple of weeks ago, I was looking at Lost in America, which was his previous film, which I think is for about an hour, about as funny a movie as has ever been made, but it has a weak ending. And that's been one of the problems that Albert Brooks has had with ending his films. I feel that with this one, he realized it had to go somewhere. It couldn't just be ideas about purgatory. And I think he was right to aim it in the direction of that love story. I think the payoff is terrific.
I think it's very conventional. A happy ending from a guy I expect to do more.
Okay, when we come back, Mr. Johnson set in Africa at the time of the British Empire.
Why are you so bloody late? Sir, the clock is fast.
Clock has stopped, Johnson.
Ah, but it was fast when it stopped.
You heard him.
Maybe we don't need money.
Oh, don't be silly, Johnson. These villagers around here aren't going to work for bloody nothing, you know. They're not stupid.
That's a scene from Mr. Johnson in the first movie by Bruce Beresford, since his Driving Miss Daisy won last year's Oscar as Best Picture. This one tells a very different kind of story set in the 1920s in British West Africa, where an African clerk named Mr. Johnson prides himself on his position as one of the few educated men in the district. He helps the British district officer fulfill his dream of building a road and even suggests a way the books can be juggled to keep the work on schedule.
Here, sir. There's £3,000 left in the treasury budget.
That's not road money, though.
No, sir. But you use it now. And next year when the new money comes, you write all the road vouchers, but the road already finished.
That's Pierce Brosnan as the British officer and Maynard Eziashi in a very strong central performance as Mr. Johnson. When the creative bookkeeping is uncovered, of course, it is Mr. Johnson who gets blamed and gets fired.
You understand, Mr. Johnson. You have committed embezzlement and forgery.
Oh, yes, sir.
So he's out of work after covering up for his superior. Then he goes to work for the local British storekeeper, and they get in a fight over money, which ends with violence.
Well, did Johnson attack you? Do you want to charge him?
No. Oh, everything's all right here, Mr. Rudbeck. I had a accident. An accident to my nose.
I've seen Mr. Johnson 2 times now. Both times I found myself asking, what exactly is this movie trying to say? It's based on a 1939 novel by Joyce Carey, who lived and worked in Africa and who apparently saw the story as an example of the way one civilization imposed itself on another with tragic results for those like Mr. Johnson who were caught in the middle. There are scenes in which British law is seen here as completely unsuited to the local customs and lifestyles, but on the other hand, Mr. Johnson himself is far from an exemplary character. I don't know for sure what the movie means to say, but I do know that it does an intriguing job of capturing a time and place and the people who live there, and I admired that about it.
I thought it was sort of ordinary in this sense. It's just the way that you talked about it, your first possible meaning of the film, which is that a guy from one culture gets involved and co-opted by another culture and destroyed. I think we've seen that in African films repeatedly, and I didn't think this thing brought anything new to the party.
What about the performance, though, by the central character?
Well,
this guy has charisma, he has presence, he has humor, he has timing, and he makes Mr. Johnson real.
Yes, I thought there was a real guy up there as Mr. Johnson. His story, what happens to him, didn't seem to be anything fresh to me. I can't really recommend the film. I'm not dumping on the picture as much as I'm saying it's nothing new.
Okay, coming up next, the sexy thriller that's the talk of France, La Femme Nikita.
Called La Femme Nikita, drawing record crowds in Paris to the sexy, violent story of a young woman criminal who is captured by police and reprogrammed into an undercover assassin. Anne Perriot plays a punk known as Nikita, and here she receives karate training in jail. later, she's fully trained, and the man who has trained her takes her out for her birthday and gives her an unexpected gift. He's all business.
Il est chargé. 6 balles en titane et un chargeur en plus en cas de nécessité.
Je comprends pas.
Derrière toi, il y a une table de 3 personnes. Une femme en robe orange et 2 hommes en costume clair. L'un est garde du corps.
Her gentleman in her life, and the real story here is in her heart and mind between her violent and romantic impulses.
Bon, c'est pas terrible comme accueil, je recommence. Hein.
La Femme Nikita is a very energetic, entertaining picture with an exciting actress at its center, Anne Perriot. Some of the themes of the film involving rehabbing a killer remind me of A Clockwork Orange. It's also stylishly violent without being mindlessly so. It's a real good film from the young French director Luc Besson, who we both admired when he did his first film, Subway, a few years ago.
Yeah, he's only 31 years old, and already he's the king of the French box office. His last film, Big Blue, which flopped in other markets, is the biggest French film in modern French history. They love him over there. This film, I think, is really a good film. I enjoyed, as you did, Anne Perriot in the central role. She's so tough and so ragged at the beginning, and then as she changes, she shows those depths and the warmth and the humanity that's allowed to come out of her that was there all along. It's kind of Pygmalion crossed with a spy movie.
At the same time, I think it reveals just how much the movie loves violence and violent characters, because as you watch this, just like in A Clockwork Orange, and you see this sort of hateful character at the beginning, forget sort of hateful, and they have been, that violence is taken away in a sense, or modulated in some way. We feel there's something missing there. And it really puts us in touch with how much we want to see action.
There's another thing going on here, too, though, because I think what he's trying to show is that the government, in its own way, is just as violent as thugs are. They just do it in a bureaucratic approach. Coming up next, the video pick of the week, a little-known title that made my list of last year's 10 best films. Films in a long time named Santa Sangre, and directed by Alejandro Jodorowsky, whose 1971 film El Topo has become a cult classic. The movie, which is in English, tells the story of a young man who was raised in the circus, where his imagination is bombarded by a wild kaleidoscope of images and outrageous acts. A collision between Freud and Fellini. The movie contains blood and glory, saints and circuses, trapeze artists and tattooed ladies, and unspeakable secrets of the soul. It's been 18 years between films for Jodorowsky, and all of that time, the frustration and inspiration must have been building. Now comes this work in a rush of creative energy and joy. It's being released next week on home video, and if you relate strongly to audacious visual images, I recommend you check out Santa Sangre. It's not about Santa Claus. Now let's take another look at the movies we reviewed on this show. 2 thumbs down for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. I think the title says it all. 2 more thumbs down for Paul Schrader's The Comfort of Strangers, which never quite delivers on its bizarre premise. 2 thumbs up for the Albert Brooks comedy Defending Your Life, with Brooks and Meryl Streep in a heavenly way station. I like the ending more than Gene did. A split decision on Mr. Johnson, Bruce Beresford's story set in colonial Africa. Gene didn't think the story was fresh. I liked the sense of time and place. And finally, 2 thumbs up for the stylish, violent, and exciting La Femme Nikita, about a French woman programmed as a government killer.
And that's the film I think we both like the best on the list.
Yeah, that's a real good one, and also Defending Your Life is one that I would defend.
I would say...
Not with my life, though.
Okay, I would defend it by saying another opportunity to screen his 2 better films, Real Life and Lost in America.
Okay, and I liked his Modern Romance, too, with Catherine Harold, as you recall. That's it for this week. Next time we'll be back with a special show on Tom Cruise, analyzing his all-American appeal in a show we're calling Tom Cruise, the Star Next Door. Until then, the balcony is closed.